Hello children, myself Nidhisha. Today I will explain you chapter 1 of Flamingo. Chapter 1 is The Last Lesson, written by Alphonse Daudet. Let's see about the author. Alphonse Daudet is considered to be one of the most iconic names of French literature. He was an eminent French novelist and dramatist who played a major role in the transition of 19th century theatre. He is famous for creating short stories and novels with a charming mixture of realism, humor, and sentiment. His characters and themes often reflected his love for simple, ordinary people. Very tender images of life shine through in his writings. Let's have a look of the chapter. I will tell you in brief. The last lesson is set in the days of the French-Prussian War, in which France was defeated by Prussia, led by Bismarck. Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. In this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. In the last lesson, one of his best known stories, Daudet shows the change in France's fortune through the eyes of a young Alsatian boy and his last French lesson. The setting is an unnamed town in Alsace, and the story takes place at the beginning of the Prussian occupation of Alsace and Lorraine in around 1873. The last lesson is a sentimental story of national pride and the importance of education. It is a simple story from the memory of a young schoolboy. It deals with the grave issue of the German occupation of France. M. Hamel, through his speech, describes the importance of education and language. M. Hamel suggests that France can maintain its national identity even under German rule if they are able to hold on to their native language. The story also makes a point of not taking education for granted. The narrator describes his regression for not learning his lessons upon discovering that M. Hamel was to be replaced. An important link is made between language, education, and national pride, suggesting perhaps that love for one's country is also something that should not be taken for granted. The last lesson is an emotionally powerful story dealing with great issues in a simple narrative. Children, uh, let's take brief look of main characters of the chapter. Franz, the narrator. Franz is a young schoolboy in the French region of Alsace-Lorraine in the 19th century. M. Hamel, the schoolmaster of a small village school in the French region of Alsace-Lorraine. Oldhauser, former mayor, former postmaster, elder villagers who gathers with the children in the M. Hamel's classroom to hear the last lesson. Prussian soldiers, forces of the occupying Prussian power which had invaded the French region of Alsace-Lorraine and claimed it for Prussia. Watcher, a blacksmith in a village in the French region of Alsace-Lorraine. For your reference, here I have given few expressions with its meaning. Please read it. Let's start an explanation of the chapter. For your reference, here I have given original text, summary, and meanings of the original text partly. So let's begin our explanation. I am going to begin. Little Franz, a young schoolboy, is the narrator of the story, The Last Lesson. As Franz started very late for school that beautiful warm morning, he was in great fear, especially because he was late and his teacher, M. Hamel, had said that he would put up questions to him and the rest of the pupils on participles. Franz knew nothing about participles as he had not learned the lesson. The narrator friend comments his great fear of being late for class. This shows us he is a young child. Furthermore, the act that the narrator has not learned the lesson on participles indicates that he is not hard worker but rather a pupil who delayed his schoolwork. For a moment, he thought to run away and spend a day out. The weather was warm and bright, and birds were chirping. He saw Prussian soldiers doing their drills in an open field. The beautiful atmosphere tempted him, but he resisted the urge to skip school and hurried onwards. The narrator's negligence of his schooling is further reflected in the temptation that he feels to skip school altogether. The Prussian soldiers signal to the reader that the story is set during the Franco Prussian War. In spite of the beautiful day and the chirping birds, therefore, the presence of the soldiers indicates that all is not well in this idyllic French landscape. On his way to school, Franz passed through the Times Square and noticed a crowd in front of the bulletin board. Franz recalled that for the past 2 years, all the bad news like the lost battles and the orders of the commanding officers had been coming from the notice board. He wondered what it was this time, but hurried off to school. Here, bulletin board is the symbol of Prussian oppressive power, through which the Prussians communicate their official orders to the villagers. The villagers perceive the news and orders posted by the Prussians on the board as bad points. They are under the control of a foreign power, one that imposes demands and restrictions on them. As Franz hurried past the crowd, the town's blacksmith watcher called out to him and told him not to hurry. There was plenty of time, but Franz did not stop. He thought that the blacksmith was making fun of him. Having been in such a rush, Franz arrived at school out of breath. He was surprised to note that the school was uncommon quiet. Usually, at the beginning of the day, there was a great noise caused by the opening and closing of the desks, lesson repeated in the chorus, or the teacher's ruler rapping on the table. But on this day, the school was strangely quiet and still. The narrator had hoped that he could sneak to his desk unseen in the midst of the commotion. Here, airy silence indicates that something was wrong on the school day. Children are naturally loud, but this unusual silence suggests that something drastic has silenced them. Peeping in through the window, he saw his classmates already in their places and M. Hamel walking to and fro with his iron ruler under his arm. Franz was terrified and blushing, was forced to open the door and enter the classroom in front of everyone. The narrator's feelings upon entering the classroom points to the extent of his terror of M. Hamel in particular. This indicates the power imbalance in the relationship between the little pupil and teacher. To his surprise, M. Hamel spoke to the narrator very kindly and told him to take his seat very quickly. As he sat down, he noticed that his teacher dressed formally in his green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap. M. Hamel was known to wear the dress that only on formal occasions, such as inspection and prize days. M. Hamel's unexpected kindness towards the narrator tells us the fact that nothing is normal on this school day. Furthermore, the special dressing of the teacher indicates that something momentous is happening on this day. There was still another strange surprise for Franz. He noticed that the back benches that were always empty were filled with the villagers. The former mayor, the former postmaster, and the old man Hauser, with his triangular cap, and some other village people, occupied those back benches. Everyone looked gloomy. Old Hauser sat with an open primer on his knees. Unusual surrounding confirming that this is an unusual school day. The strange silence in school Attendance of various elders of the cross section of the entire village community in the class is a further indication that this is a special day, but not in a good way because everyone looks gloomy on this special day. M. Hamel climbed up his chair and spoke to his pupils in a gentle and serious tone. He announced that they were going to have their last lesson in French that day. An order had come from Berlin. French would not be taught anymore. Instead, German was going to be taught, and the new teacher was expected to arrive the very next day. M. Hamel further instructed the crowd that he wanted them to be very attentive as that would be their last French lesson. M. Hamel's shocking announcement shows us that not only Prussians gained military control of their land, but they also desire to control the villagers' means of self-expression by banning the French language and imposing German instead. These words came as a shock to little Franz. He realized that the villagers he had seen by the bulletin board outside the town hall had gathered to read the order that had just been posted there. He understood why the blacksmith had told him not to hurry. He could also see why M. Hamel had put on his best clothes. Franz's own shock over M. Hamel's announcement indicates that the new Prussian order represents an unusual crushing of freedoms in village. M. Hamel's words also came as a shock to Franz because he suddenly realized how little he knew of the French language. He barely knew how to write in French and he was devastated that he must stop learning. He was sorry to have wasted his time. He had always been enjoying himself outdoors rather than studying. He had hated his books that had seemed such a bother like a while back seemed precious to him. He felt sad at the thought of M. Hamel was going away. M. Hamel's announcement had a great effect on Franz. He realized the value of his education. He neglected the homework given by the teacher. The news has awakened him not only to know how little he knows of his own language, but also how much he wants to learn. Franz realized that why M. Hamel had worn his best clothes. He also understood why the villagers had gathered in the room. They felt sorry that they had not gone to school for longer. Now they had come to thank the teacher for his faithful service and to show their respect for the country that was now not theirs. That M. Hamel is wearing his best clothes in honor of this last lesson indicates the teacher's own great respect, seriousness, and undertaking his duties as teacher. For that momentous occasion, obviously he required to wear special dress, as it marked the end of his 40 years of service to the school and to the village. The dress reflected M. Hamel's dignity and nobility. The presence of the elder villagers in the room revealed their appreciation and gratitude for M. Hamel's service as well as for the education. The presence of them during last lesson also reveals the community's desire to honor their country and mother tongue, both of which are under attack by the Prussian invaders. M. Hamel asked friends to recite the rule for the participle. Franz wished he could tell the rule. He was very nervous because he has neglected to learn. He felt ashamed that he had not learned his lessons. He stood up to recite but stumbled on the first words. He failed miserably. Failure of friends to recite the rule for participle shows not only the negligence of his school work but also negligence of his own duties as a French citizen and speaker whose language and identity are under threat. He expected M. Hamel to scold him, but he did not scold Franz. He used that occasion to lecture the class. He said France was not the only person to blame. The people of Alsace had never been interested in learning. The people always put it off till the next day. Due to this reason, the Prussian occupiers had the right to say them that they had pretended to be Frenchmen and yet they could neither speak nor write their own language. M. Hammer's kind words for friends and the class to make them realize that they all were fail in their educational duties. M. Hamel continuously said that according to him, the parents were not keen that the children studied. They preferred the children to work in order to earn a little more money. He also blamed himself for sending Franz to water his flowers and instead of having him learn the lessons. He was sorry for giving them a day off when he wanted to go fishing. M. Hamel highlighted here the priority of value of money over the value of learning by sending out their children to work instead of encouraging them to learn. He, along with villagers, counted himself an equal culprit in the negligence of the children's education. M. Hamel then went on to speak about the beauties of the French language. He then praised the mother tongue as the most beautiful language in the world. It was the most beautiful, most logical, and clearest language in the world. He encouraged the class to guard the language carefully, assured them if they hold fast their language, they would be able to get rid of the Prussian rulers. Their language was the key to their freedom from slavery. His comment on the importance of guarding the language emphasizes the link between language, identity, and freedom. He firmly believed that language not only expresses cultural identity, it constitutes its very essence. Without language, one cannot hold on their identity and freedom. The teacher then proceeded to the French German class lesson. He read grammar lesson. Franz understood everything. Even M. Hamel said with extraordinary clarity. Franz thought that he had never listened so carefully to the teacher before and that the teacher himself had never explained things so clearly and with so much patience. It appeared to him that on the last day he wanted to share all his knowledge before going away. Franz's concentration and grasping for his mother tongue showed that he had first time engrossed himself fully to his studies. He finally understood the value and significance of his education. Even M. Hamel was giving his best and fulfilling his duties on this day of the last lesson. After the grammar lesson, the class proceeded to a lesson in writing. M. Hamel gave them new copies on which was written France, Alsace, France, Alsace in beautiful handwriting. He asked little children to trace their fish hooks. Everyone started working very quietly. Franz wondered whether the pigeons on the roof would also be made to sing in German. The last assignment indicated the teacher's intention of instilling a sense of patriotism in his pupils. Franz then looked up to see M. Hamel every now and then. He sat motionless in his chair, looking at one thing and the other in the room. It seemed as if he wanted to take in everything in that little schoolroom. After 40 years, it must have heartbroken his heart to leave the country. But he was determined to teach till the very last moment. M. Hamel and his sister, who was packing upstairs, would leave the country the very next day. Here, Franz tried to understand the feelings of his teacher. Franz knew only one side of his teacher. Today, he witnessed other sides of the teacher which emerged during this last lesson, like kindness towards him and rest of the class, as well as a deep sense of patriotism, sadness, loss, etc. Because he had to give up the classroom, which was a home to him for 40 years. Franz was impressed by M. Hamel's determination to overuse every lesson until the very last. The pupils moved on to a history lesson. Before babies were given their turn to recite ABCDs, during their last lesson, Franz noticed that Hauser had put on his spectacles and was trying to spell the letters. M. Hamel helped the villagers by spelling the letters with them. He was crying and his voice trembled with emotion. Each one of them felt equally emotional. They wanted to laugh and cry at once. Friends never forgot the last lesson. M. Hamels insisted on seeing through all the lessons to the very last also reveals another side of the teacher to friends, that is his dedication. The teacher is determined to fulfill every aspect of his duties on this last day. The village community had witnessed this last lesson along with young ones. This act reflects unity between young and old, as the old participated in the education of the youngsters. The church clock struck 12. They heard the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill. It was the time for the school to close. And Hamel stood up. He wanted to say something, but he could not, as he was choked and overwhelmed with emotions. He turned to the blackboard and instead, with a piece of chalk, he wrote in large letters, Viva la France. It means long live France. Then he took support of the wall and with a wave of his hand, without speaking a single word, signaled them to leave and dismissed the class. The trumpets of the Prussian soldiers remind the reader the threatening presence of the foreign occupiers just outside the school doors. M. Hamel's inability to speak during the final moments of the lesson reflects the confusion of his emotions on this occasion. In the midst of this, M. Hamel managed one final act of resistance. He used the instrument of education, the blackboard, and insisted on his freedom and that of his country. Children, for your kind reference, here I have given you textual exercise with its answers. Please refer all the slides, learn properly and revise your answers again and again. Thank you.